Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for making time to be on this call this morning and join us. It's so great to be together again. So, as we're preparing for the summer, I'm so glad to hear that Miss Sarah is going to talk about, things to watch out for over the summer. It's really important that we're reminded of those kinds of things, and that's also why we are going to talk about healthy relationships and unhealthy relationships, because often in the summertime we have time to hang out with friends, or we're meeting new friends because maybe we've started a job, and just things are shifting. Some friendships or relationships are growing, others are kind of shrinking away, and so it's just important to have some tools in the forefront of our mind to help us navigate this so that our summer can be healthy. And by the end of the summer, the relationships that we want and that are good relationships can be strong and healthy. And the ones that we don't want, we can recognize those aren't good. Let's just create some boundaries and allow those to be minimized in our life. So the first thing I want everyone to think about is the word foundation. When you think of the word foundation in the chat, and everyone can chime in on this, in the chat, I'd love for you to write a word or a phrase that you would say helps to define the word foundation. Trust, okay. God, definitely my foundation. What else? What word would you use to define foundation? Strong base. Yep. I'm writing out my definition.
Solid. Nice small.
Thank you.
Genuine.
Cool. So the definition I would like to add to this is the natural or prepared ground or base on which a structure rests. So when we are thinking about our friendships, our relationships, in all the different dynamics, we want to make sure that those relationships have a healthy, strong foundation so that they can bear the weight of a great life together. They can bear the weight of what true friendship, what true relationship looks like. Because we all know there are good moments and bad moments. And if we want to have true relationships where we know someone has our back, then it has to have a strong foundation to build that trust, to build those components that bring to a healthy relationship. All right, so let's now move to sharing the screen. Cyril.
Yes.
So today we're going to focus on relationships, healthy versus unhealthy, because at the end of the day, you have the power to choose. But it's helpful to be able to recognize when something is a healthy thing or when something is a toxic thing and unhealthy, because often people don't realize, they believe a lie that maybe the problem's me, and they live in a relationship for a long time in a very unhealthy situation. So that makes them unhealthy and them weaker, and it's definitely not going to help the other person grow. So it's important to kind of have some things to recognize, you know what, although this doesn't feel really good in the moment, it's healthy that my best friend is telling me that I'm coming across like a jerk right now because I need to shift something and change my attitude. So that could be healthy. But if you're in this relationship where all the time you feel small and you feel like you're so bad and you're so evil, that's an indicator that something's not quite right here. So let's go to the first slide. Characteristics of a healthy relationship. These are things that you want to, over time, realize we have this. And we're talking about friendships. We're talking about healthy relationships with our siblings, with our parents, grandparents. We're talking about healthy relationships with a significant other. All of these things apply to all of our relationships. So, mutual trust. It's really important that they can trust you and you can trust them. Honesty. Honesty is always important. Now, it doesn't mean you say whatever you're thinking. People mistake that. Well, that's the way I feel, so I'm just being honest. Self control is an important thing to remember, but being honest and truthful is always very important. Compromise. Compromise is a balance. Sometimes we compromise on, okay, it's your turn to choose what movie we're going to watch, but I'm not going to compromise by going out and getting drunk and getting high because I really know that that's not a good thing. So there's a balance on how we use that word compromise in our relationship. Emotional safety. To have a true, strong friend that you know has your back means that if you're having a rough day and you're upset, you're crying, you're angry, you know that it's a safe place to let those emotions out, and it's not going to be used against you. It's not going to be taken advantage of. So you need to know that you're emotionally safe. Shared values. This is really important to have a deep relationship. We can have a lot of kind of shallow friends that, sure, we're friends because we work together, but we're not deep friends because we don't have shared values. And that's an important thing. If faith is really important to you, then your best friend and the people that you trust the most should share your faith on some level, because that's going to help you walk through and stay true to what you believe. Shared goals. This is important when in a deep relationship, like a significant other. If you are both working towards the same types of goals, that will help, because it doesn't really work. If I had a boyfriend who just sat on the couch and played video games all the time while I was out working and taking care of all the responsibilities and making sure everything's in place, that's not shared goals, and that's not going to work out. Asking for what you need. Healthy people ask. I can't say that enough. If you need something, don't assume that I'm going to know. Healthy people ask. And our culture has become toxic in a lot of ways to have this kind of passive aggression and kind of side comments. That's really not fair to anyone, because some people just really don't get it. And like with my husband, I have to be very clear. I can't give a subtle hint. He's not going to get it. I had one of my girlfriends, she was like, I left the sheets folded on the bed clean. I assumed he would know to make the bed. Well, if you don't ask him, honey, when you get home, can you please make the bed so that when I get home late tonight, the bed's ready for sleeping in? If you don't ask, you're probably not going to get. So healthy people ask. Connectedness to family and friends. This is really important. And this is something that I see with a lot of the young people that I work with in the community. When a relationship is unhealthy with friends or with significant others, there's this need to pull that person away from their family and their community, to isolate them. And that is very unhealthy and becomes predatorial. So connectedness to family, if your friends want to, come by your house and say hi to your mom, and always like make a point to say hi to your other friends when they're around you, just those connections, they surround us with something that's healthy and also a line of protection. Individuality. The people who you have strong relationships should allow you to be you. You are an individual. You were created to be something great, and you need to be able to shine in that way with your gifts and your talents. Skilled communication. Healthy relationships are going to have be able to talk. That talk word is so important. So in a healthy relationship, to be able to talk things out and also listen. It goes both ways. That's part of that mutual trust. Humor and fun. Life is short. We need to live life to the fullest till it's overflowing, like Miss Sarah says. But part of that is having humor and fun together. If you can't laugh with someone, maybe that you shouldn't be spending most of your time with them if they're too serious. Humor is medicine for our souls. And often I'll tell people when they'll see me and I just have a big smile on my face, but they know that there's a lot of bad going on in my world. And I'm like, listen, at the end of the day, it's laugh or cry. And I would rather laugh. Laughter brings healing, it helps us process. And so if we can, when it's appropriate, make light and still find joy in the moment, that's good. And just to be able to laugh till we cry sometimes. So having fun is good. Now, also in a healthy relationship, the ability to control our anger is so important. We have to have self-control because there's times where we are really upset and it's warranted, but we need to be able to control our anger, and our friends or significant others need to be able to control their anger in a way that it's not explosive towards the other person, because that breaks the relationship. We need to have the ability to resolve conflict. That comes back to being able to talk and to listen and to compromise. We need to be able to problem solve. So yesterday, I just moved into a new house. And yesterday we had ordered a new bed frame and mattress. And I'm like, okay, we have to set this up. And so my husband and my son, they built the bed frame, they put the mattress on top, and it didn't fit. We had ordered the wrong bed frame. And it's just like, oh my goodness, there's like lots of problems in this. And because we had ordered it, that means you have to pay extra for shipping to send it back. I'm like, can we buy some wood? Can we extend it? Like, we had to find a way. I had to control my anger in the situation. Then I had to figure out, how can we solve this problem? How can we solve this problem? And I was able to find someone who needed that size bed. I was able to, all in the same day, sell the bed so that we could recoup the same amount of money to rebuy the bigger size of the bed. So we needed to, I had to control my anger so I could still think clearly and solve the problem. And there, in that conflict, there was no breaking or fringing in my trust and in my relationship with my husband or my son, because I could control my frustration and we could work together to solve the problem. So, mutual respect. This is really important. We need to respect people, and our culture tells us people have to earn respect. And it's important to earn respect, but you have control over you, and you can choose, I'm going to be respectful because I'm a respectful person. I choose to respect people, not because they deserve it, because most people don't, not because they've earned it, because most people don't. But I'm not going to walk around being disrespectful to everyone, because I am a respectful person, and it has more to do with me and the character I want to be. And so having mutual respect means, in my relationships, if I'm going to have a real relationship with someone where I know they have my back, then that means they're going to respect me. Even if they don't like what I'm doing, they're at least going to respect my opinion, and I'm going to respect them because I'm a respectful person. And then autonomy and dependence. This is an important thing in a relationship. You need to be able to be yourself. You need to be able to think for yourself. You need to be able to follow your goals for life. But in a relationship, there is a little bit of, I need to be able to depend on you and you can depend on me. So there's a healthy balance in all of that. Okay, let's look to, Cyril, the characteristics of the unhealthy relationship. Our next slide, please. So this is really important for the red flags, and we'll go through these really quickly. Control. If you are feeling all the time that you are being controlled, that is a red flag. That is an unhealthy situation. Now, do a self-check on yourself. Am I controlling over my friendships? Am I controlling over the people I'm around? I need to back off and let them have their autonomy, let them be who they are. Hostility. Do you feel like you're walking on glass all the time with with this friend within this relationship, is it always kind of there's always a tension there, there's always hostility. That's an indicator that you might want to set up some boundaries and distance yourself from that person. Contempt. If there's just always this like this contempt in your relationship, whether it comes into jealousy or other things, that there just isn't peace, there just isn't a unity there, that's a red flag, and I would set some boundaries there. Defensiveness. If you have a problem with your friend and you can in a loving, calm way say, when you do this, it feels like this to me. If they're always defensive and they're not able to receive that, that is an indicator that that's an unhealthy relationship, and the foundation of that relationship is going to have a lot of cracks in it, and it's not going to be able to hold a great structure of a great relationship. Dishonesty. If you cannot be truthful, but if you find they're lying to you, for me, that's like a game breaker. When people lie to me, I'm just like, okay, you are on the associate. You're on the, I could be an associate. We can kind of have a shallow friendship. But if you can't be truthful in front of me for whatever reason it is, then we can't be true friends, deep friends, and have a relationship of trust. Disrespect. Now, of course, there is a little bit when, especially in your small peer group, you can laugh and joke around a little bit. But if they're disrespecting you and they can't receive that correction and shift, that's something that they will never they won't be able to respect you until you set firm boundaries. Passive aggressive behavior. Now, this is something that we have to do a self check and make sure we're not doing this to other people. But also, if other people are doing this to us, they're like kind of making us feel guilty without saying it directly, or kind of mumbling things under their breath as they walk away. That kind of thing is very toxic and becomes very unhealthy. Sarcasm. Now, I can be the queen of sarcasm sometimes, but I have to guard my mouth and make sure that I'm not saying cutting things that can hurt. Sometimes I get too sarcastic because I think it's funny, but then I realize, oh my goodness, that was hurtful. I am so sorry. Please forgive me. So that's something we have to find a way in our fun and in our humor to not do it at the expense of other people. And that's something I'm constantly trying to work at, because I don't want to hurt my friends, but I can be quick about things. So that's like the thorn in my side sometimes. Dependence. If there is a healthy way that we can depend on our friends, but if there's this codependency that starts to get really meshy in our lives, that becomes very unhealthy. You need to be able to be an individual. You need to be able to have other friends. You need to not have to be telling a friend where you are at every moment and what you're doing, just things like that. Intimidation. If you feel intimidated or manipulated, further down it says emotional manipulation. That's something that we have to guard ourselves. If we're feeling intimidated by someone all the time, that might not be a healthy relationship. Now, it's important to do a self check and realize, am I just being insecure, or are they intimidating? And just to kind of find that balance and figure out why I feel this way and what's at the root of it. Now, more seriously, threats. If you are in a relationship with someone, a friendship or a significant other, and they're threatening you, if you don't do this, I'm not going to hang out with you. If you don't do this, I'm going to do this. That is so toxic. I would just start, creating some distance in that. Isolation from family and friends. And we talked about that on the other side. If you are with someone that's always just trying to pull you away from your community. I had one good friend, and she was with this guy. And at the beginning, he came to church all the time. And then because we started catching on to him and realizing a lot of negative behavior and a lot of negative characteristics, he picked up on that we realized, he's not such a good guy. So he started pulling her away. She wasn't allowed to sit with us at church. Then she wasn't even allowed to come to church. Then she wasn't even allowed to hang out with me. Then she wasn't even allowed to call me or text me. And so she started realizing, because he was just pulling her away from her healthy community and her healthy family, it actually caused her to be very unhealthy and end up in the hospital. And so it really took us a long time to get her back with family and community and back into a healthy space. So if you have a friendship or a significant other that's constantly pulling you away from your safe place in the community who knows you best and who's going to look out for you, that's a huge red flag. Okay, physical violence. We hear this, but there's a lot of individuals that put up with physical violence. If someone is hitting you, if someone is shoving you, if someone is hurting you, you deserve better. You need to get out of that relationship. Same with emotional manipulation. This we see more and more because people know that they can't get away with punching out someone. But this emotional manipulation and control, if that's happening in your relationship, it's not your fault, but you need to get out of it. And we can help you if you are in that situation. And then sexual violence. This is something that people don't talk about a lot, but it's really important because if that's something that's happening, that's not okay. And you are way more valuable than to be a victim of that. And if that is happening to you, please let us know so we can help you stop that and get out of that. Or let someone in your sphere of trust, like your parents or a mentor, your pastor, somebody know. Then power plays. This is the last one. So if you just constantly feel like no matter what you try to do, everything you do um, is being trumped. That's like a term we use in playing card games. You're ready and you have this trump card that you put it down and you win it all. If you just feel like no matter what you're doing in a relationship, that your friend or your significant other just always has this power play, and just your opinion doesn't matter anymore. What you want to do doesn't matter. That's a huge red flag of an unhealthy relationship. So if we could go back to the healthy relationship slide for a quick second. These red flags are important to know. If you could check a few of those in a relationship, that's a huge indicator that you need to get out of the relationship and build relationships where you can have these things, where you can have trust and honesty, where you feel safe, where all of these things, because you need a foundation that you can build to have a trusted relationship where you know someone has your back. So, any questions, any thoughts?
So, Dr. Liz, the question, as the kids are thinking through this, what if I have one of those unhealthy habits? What would I do to change a behavior of, something that I see that's a red flag on me?
Right, great question. Because doing a self check is really important. And sometimes we all have blind spots in our own life. And sometimes we don't see those things. And so the first thing is to identify. If you realize, oh, I'm saying sarcastic things that hurt people, then to just try to really guard. And if you're a person of faith, and if you're not, I would encourage you to be, but to pray, God, help me to guard my mouth. Help me not to spit out everything that I'm thinking. Help me to just be slow to speak. And if you find that you're being controlling in a relationship, take a minute of self-reflection and be like, why am I being controlling? And often those things come back to a root of being afraid that you're going to lose that friend, being afraid that something's going to happen. And fear is usually at the root of a lot of those unhealthy behaviors. So to be able to have a moment and maybe talk to a trusted adult, not just a peer, someone at your own age, but a trusted adult in your life who and say, I seem to have some bad relationships and some bad friendships. And I know I'm partly at fault because I think I tend to be controlling. And to be able to talk through what is it I'm afraid of and how can I get healing from that so that I can be a good friend. Because if you want good friends, you have to be a good friend. And and so to kind of sometimes we can do these things on our own and we can just say, God, I need your help. Help me to not be controlling. Help me to give people their space. But sometimes it's a little deeper than that. And we need to walk through that with a mom, a grandma, grandpa, a trusted adult in our life.
One of the things that as you were talking about, Dr. Liz, about the problem solving, uh, you know, ability to solve the problem, you know. I read in a book when a Titanic failed, about 1,517 people or so died in Titanic. But there is a new book that got released very recently that clearly shows they could have saved every one of them if only they were, calm and collected. And how there's so many ways by which they could have saved every one of them. And so I think that in a relationship, if we find a problem and we don't, um, we don't need to stand off or a bystander in a relationship, and that's kind of like in a healthy relationship. Any other questions for Dr. Les?
I have a comment, and I'm not a student. I'm just an old person. Um, that's I enjoy all that Dr. Liz presents, and Dr. Liz, this is something that needs to be presented more than one time. This is so good um, that I think in the maybe after school starts again, that you can present this same lesson. We don't have all of our students. I think we only have maybe 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, maybe 10 or 12. I'm not sure. Um, but this is wonderful because we have so many children these days who are not, they're looking at a device and their friends are through devices or whatever. They're not really talking and intermingling. I know I'm very old and I'm so pleased to be very old, but we had contact with real people, you know, it wasn't just through, I mean, and technology is wonderful, but we need to be very aware. And I know we do have maybe some caregivers in the background. These things need to be stressed at home as well, because our children, boys and girls, can get caught up in bad relationships.
Mhm.
Not only boys and girls, men and women get up in bad relationships. And it can be fatal. It can actually be fatal. And I mean, I taught health for a number of years as well. And one of the things that was a part of um, our curriculum was talking about different kinds of relationships and having healthy relationships, being not standing and receiving abuse, because being in an unhealthy relationship is being abusive, and it happens with young people. It happens with older people. It happens with people in general. So we just want our children to be aware, which you have done an excellent job, as always, Dr. Liz, to bring out these points that we don't have to take these kinds of behaviors from people. And this has been going on for years. When I was in high school, I rode a bus, and there was a girl on the bus who constantly was hit and cursed at by her boyfriend, and she really thought he loved her. And I never could understand that, but it's an illness, you know, it's an illness, and it's, you know, it just perpetuates itself. So let's just be aware that girls and boys can be abused physically, mentally, emotionally, socially. But this lesson is an excellent one. And Dr. Liz, please do it again.
You know,
Thank you.
thank you. On that, if I could just, as a warning for the summer, this is something that is happening because you brought it up, Miss Sarah, about the friends on social media. If you haven't met a person personally, physically, there are so many sites for teens to meet friends because they're lonely.
Mhm.
These sites are actually they're predators pretending to be
Right.
young people.
Mhm.
And we had a tragic situation last year where one of our teens ended up committing suicide because of one of these situations, and then they started getting blackmailed. Something happened in, I think it was more near the Charleston area. Also a really good kid. He was a Boy Scout and he found a friend online and ended up it's and then we had a kid locally here in my little community that I'm very close to who just, oh, I want to have friends. And he went on this website and thought he was having just friendly chats with a young lady. And it turned into blackmail, and we had to call the police. Thankfully he came to his parents before it got too far. But this is something, and what we learned from the sheriff's department is most of these sites, they're in other countries around the world where they reach out to young people just to be friends, but then it turns into something very toxic and dangerous and trafficking and all that kind of thing. So I just want to put out my plea to all of you. Please do not be fake friends with people that you have not met personally. If you have met them personally, then, and you're also friends on social media, fine. But if you don't know that they are an actual real person, even if they send you a photograph, even if you see a video, it could be a young person that's being trafficked. It's not a safe thing if you haven't met them personally.